This is our second video for Wednesday. When something doesn't work out, you need to either change your approach or change the people. In my previous video, we talked about Trump's turnaround in domestic politics, or rather, the departure from the focus on foreign policy to a focus on domestic policy. And now let's talk about who will be the scapegoat. First, about what, and then who.
All right, I have breaking news from Washington. The White House and President Trump are dissatisfied with some of their high-ranking cabinet members, and they might be planning to make changes as early as January. So around Christmas and New Year, we might hear about new names coming to the White House and about old ones being asked to stop serving the country. Sometimes
leaks are sometimes made to test the reaction, sometimes to reassure supporters, and sometimes to distract attention. What we really don't know right now.
So now the leak first appeared on social media late at night. Rumor has it that President Trump is unhappy that the economy isn't recovering the way he would like. Yes, the stock market has reached more than 80 new highs, and President Trump wants that for people with assets and retirement savings. But he understands that the economy is not just the stock market, and he has to run the country for the middle class and low-income families.
Let me explain. Securities and stocks are trading at very high prices right now. That is, those who have them, whose brokerage firms or pension funds, insurance companies sometimes hold accounts, those people are doing great. But that's for, well, let's say for 45% of American households. Their stocks went up, and they have enough to live comfortably, to make it to retirement, and then live on their retirement. 55% of the population lives paycheck to paycheck. That's, well, much better than in 95% of the countries in the world, but it's not good enough for America.
So right now there's a lot of unrest among the Make America Great Again base. Despite 87% approval from his key voters, President Trump understands that he needs to keep independent voters and some Democrats, and to really focus on making sure the working class feels stable, happy, and that their money is enough for everything they need each month.
That's what we talked about. The focus will be on those who earn and spend. Well, let's say, so to speak, spends all their earnings before getting their next paycheck.
So the decline in his rating began with ignoring the Epstein story in the summer. Then things got better. The government shutdown, although the blame for it was mostly placed on the Democrats, still hurt the employment report and the economy. By mid-November 2025, polls show Trump's approval rating nationwide at 58%, while 76% of voters rate the economy negatively. Despite the White House's statement that things are improving and inflation is falling, it all comes down to one thing. Do I feel confident with the money I spend each month? Now, critics are pointing to the 153 or 53,000 jobs lost in October, the downward revisions for previous months, and the persistently high prices for essentials like housing, which contradict the campaign promises of a quick recovery. Now it has leaked that Trump may replace Susie Wales, the woman he credits with his 2024 victory and the first White House chief of staff.
That is, the head of the president's staff in the White House, actually the most important position in the country. Well, after the president, everyone who wants to see the president has to go through her. She tries to handle all matters without bothering the president, and only passes on to him what needs to be resolved at his level. Susan seems to have missed the signs of how the country became dissatisfied with the state of the economy.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's true. Personally, I read how much he loves her, but on social media, it's leaking out that he knows change is needed. What worked one year doesn't always necessarily work the next. So this rumor seems plausible for several reasons. First, Trump was known for midterm purges. More than 80% of his team changed during his first term. I think he surrounded himself with more worthy people, but that doesn't mean purges aren't coming. Secondly, Susie Wiles, an experienced strategist credited with Trump's 2024 victory, is now being criticized by loyalists for allegedly distancing the president from the realities of the electorate and failing in messaging on H-1B visas and tariffs. And now ex-influencers are saying it's time to fire Swamp Susie. Again, I am the president. Trump, in my opinion, had a good attitude towards Susie Wiles, so I can easily imagine him just bringing in new voices to work. And now a leading sociologist has stated that we have a 5-alarm warning, which triggered a defensive reaction from Trump, hinting at possible internal changes. Politically, it might be a smart move to bring people like Stephen Muir and other leading Trump economists back into his inner circle instead of trying to advise him through interviews on Fox News. Refreshing the team with more prominent populists, people whose goal is to make life more affordable, could be exactly the kind of morale boost we're looking for ahead of 2026. Right now, replacing Susie Wiles could streamline chaotic decision-making and encourage bolder moves on inflation, job growth, and wages, but the risks are still high. And he doesn't want to alienate what is working, but he can't keep alienating those who feel that Trump's second term isn't working in their favor. I don't think it's a matter of hostility, backstabbing, or betrayal like we saw during Trump's first term. But there is a need to adjust and refocus on campaign promises that will make America great and make America more accessible.
As you can hear, the topic is the same. How can we make living freely in the country more accessible? Starting with housing and ending with the so-called basket of necessities. What is that basket? These are food products, clothing, medicine, personal hygiene items, household chemicals, basic household goods, bedding and hangers. I don't know what else. Also services like transportation, communication, gas, electricity, water, and healthcare, naturally. When people aren't worried that their income will cover all of the above and they can still save a little for retirement and entertainment, they look to the future with more peace of mind. In the last, I would say, couple of months, the Department of Justice made several mistakes. That's a fact. First of all, both the Attorney General and the head of the FBI acted oddly with Epstein's materials. I still don't understand what happened there with them. Then there were problems with filing a lawsuit against Comey. Now the judge has dismissed Comey's cases with Letitia. James will take Letitia back for sure, but I don't really understand what she has to do with Comey. But they say he has time. It's been 5 years since then. But again, I don't understand this case. Besides, at the very beginning of her term, Pam Bundy rather awkwardly closed the case against New York Mayor Adams. Yes, there is suspicion that despite her complete loyalty to Trump and her constant emphasis on his achievements in everything happening in the world, Pam might be replaced by someone who is better at organizing the work of the Attorney General's office. There are persistent rumors that Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright will be replaced, and that Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin will join the administration. He finished there. On December 31, his term ends, he hands over his duties, and he is free. He seems to be a very good organizer. Again, so to speak, at a high level. Sometimes a person who does very well at the level of a company manager is not always as good when he works under someone else. But again, generally speaking, the ability to organize, the ability to think things through, he probably has that. The Ministry of Education is slowly being disbanded, transferring all its functions to their states. In my opinion, all schools should become private, and the ministry and state and district departments should be eliminated, so not just transferred. I understand that this is impossible at the moment, but as an optimal goal, I would say to transfer it to the states for now, and then in each state start by completely, totally eliminating it. To hell with all these Rano Garano, Obrano, and the like. Education needs to be made purely commercial, and in 5 years we will see the flourishing of education in the United States of America. We will see an explosion of education in the United States of America. I think Trump will spend his second year under the slogan of destroying climate extremism. Where possible and where agreements allow, since some are still in effect for years ahead, he will completely stop subsidizing the green economy. There will be no new projects, and those that can be stopped will be stopped. He will develop the extraction of gas, oil, and uranium. By the way, because the amount of electricity we need, of course, should be produced using, let's say, nuclear energy. Or now they're working on some kind of fusion. I don't really understand what that is, so to speak. I forgot to look it up, by the way. I should have checked. Well, they call it fusion energy. It's not ready yet, but they say it's almost ready. So we need something that produces a lot of energy in a way that's not too complicated. Now they're definitely going through with the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. They're pouring billions of budget money here, wasting it on projects that are so unnecessary that they can't exist without subsidies. Well, who needs a project if... And this is a commercial project, yes, but then it turns out that it's a commercial project. Well, just like Obamacare, right? If you remove subsidies, it collapses, proving it's a bad, failed project. All right. Plans to deport 2 million illegal immigrants next year will likely boost Americans' earnings and reduce rental prices. One of the most accurate population polls is Rasmussen, as we've discussed many times, and that's also the head of the agency. So Mark Mitchell, not to be confused with Michael Mitchell, who ran the Olympics here in Los Angeles. Mark was recently at the White House, and, well, let him tell us about it himself.
Hello, public opinion enthusiasts. Welcome to Rasmussen Reports. I'm Mark Mitchell, White House Economic Advisor. I'm joking, but I did visit the White House and advised them on economic populism polling and how they need to adjust their messaging because they're contradicting their base everywhere and they're getting a little better. I'm actually very pleased with some of the things they've put out, but there's room to grow, and we'll talk about that today. But a week after I visited the White House, Paul Sperry tweeted this. Senior White House staff and cabinet heads are preparing for major personnel changes, as insiders tell me the president is increasingly dissatisfied with the economic messaging. They need to improve. Among other things, the reshuffling could affect the chief of staff. What will happen in the new year? I don't know. I met Susie. She was very nice and seemed to understand everything. Still, many people turned against her. I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going on in the White House, but the comments here are wild. It's like Charlie Brown's football, and this is H1B. Ivan Racklin suggests starting by replacing Miriam Adelson with Elon Musk. Wow. Get rid of Susie Wiles, and let Stephen Miller handle economic policy. I'm not sure, but I think he's behind the firewall project and the H1B fee, which is amazing. Do that more often, but explain to people why we're doing this, why it's important to reduce the number of H1B visas. Discuss wage stagnation and the wage crisis in America. The issue and solution depend on how you define them. That's what I'm talking about, because the Democrats kind of have this, they sort of get it. Good luck to Bill Poulter at his next job. But he already has a job. He builds houses. God, so much hate for Susie. I don't get it. I don't know anything about these palace intrigues, and I don't care. I only care about what comes out of the meat grinder. And it shouldn't be like that. Again, Trump does a lot of good things, and they get their ideas across pretty well on some issues. But it's posts like these that make me have doubts. Yes, inflation was high under Joe Biden, 9%. I think the average rate was much lower, so this might be a bit selective. Inflation is now 2.7%, so the number is lower. But all this means that prices have settled at their new higher level. And so you can tell Americans that inflation has gone down, but they're still paying a ton of money for groceries because their wages are suppressed by corporatism. That's what's happening. So to me, it looks like taking credit for solving a problem that Americans don't even have. It's kind of like George Bush Jr. standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier and declaring that the mission in Iraq is accomplished. And we know that's not true. And what's strange is that everyone seems to know this except for the people in Washington, District of Columbia. I went there thinking most people would understand me, but it felt like I was speaking a different language. I follow people on YouTube. Tash asks me what I'm watching there. Mostly it's not political because I'm tired of politics, but I have my own weather vanes. I watch people like Osman Gold who are not attached to any party at all. They want America to return to normal and clearly see the problems and what's missing. The party doesn't offer their solutions. This is another video from Sean Hett, which is basically about, I don't know, probably dating or something like that. At this point, I don't know what to say. Except that everyone in Washington, District of Columbia from the Republican Party should just watch this video. Well, this very clearly explains why you're going to lose. And I even wonder if it's worth yelling on the internet at all when everyone on YouTube understands this. This video very clearly shows that the system has deep problems, and all voters under 40 want someone to actually fix the system. They don't care who does it, they'll just pick the team with the best message. And unfortunately, as she very insightfully points out, the Democrats are starting to realize that to win, all they have to do is not be crazy. For the Republicans to win, they just have to do anything, literally anything. Just do something and you'll win. It's that simple. Voters under 40 gave Trump 60% support and had a right track rating near 50%. Because the Republicans were doing something, they dismantled the system with Dodge. They don't do that anymore. They're not dismantling the system. And what does dismantling the system mean? We need right-wing economic populism. Corporations must be held accountable. Bring us back to market capitalism. Hold Washington accountable. Fix the system. Drain the swamp. Break up the government. Put an end to waste, fraud, abuse, and the corrupt interests that rule us. This has to be done. Sorry, it's not 2016 personality cults won't work now. It's a cult of necessity. The Democrats have built an electorate of 75 million voters. The Republicans did it once. The question is, will they ever be able to build it again? Again, things like the Trump effect for the Republican Party. So, the Republican Party, which in my opinion is just waiting for Make America Great Again to go away so they can return to being Republicans, will use the Trump effect online to their advantage. Because R&C research states that thanks to President Trump, the economy is booming and inflation remains low. That hasn't changed. We haven't had deflation, prices haven't dropped, they've all risen, though the increases may have stopped. But wages are still low.
This monologue sums up everything that's happening. Wages aren't rising, but prices are going up. Maybe not as fast as under Biden, but they're still rising. And life hasn't gotten better. It hasn't gotten worse, but it hasn't gotten better either. If the Republicans don't do something that actually improves life in the country, then the Democrats will drown everyone in their fascinating but completely baseless ideas and plans, well, like Danya's mom. But everyone will be thinking, what if they actually succeed this time? And their entire brainwashed army of 72 million voters will rush to vote for a happy future, once again forgetting how many times they've already been promised this, but not once has it been delivered.
So we need to get rid of inflation. So let's find the most obvious demonstrative transactional way to show Americans that we're fighting inflation. And that would be food and housing prices. So we asked about food and housing prices. So regarding food, are food prices now higher or lower than they were 6 months ago? You can talk about the price of eggs as much as you want, and obviously everyone used the price of eggs as an example of how bad food prices were. But when you lower the price of eggs, you don't lower the price of food, and everyone knows that. 66% of Americans say that food prices are higher than they were 6 months ago. Only 30% say they are lower. Young people are most likely to say prices are higher. 72% of Americans under 40, while only 12% say they are lower. And obviously these numbers are also influenced by Republicans. Only 48% say prices are higher, but that's 80% of Democrats and 66% of independents. Now let's look at the fact that Trump objectively lowered energy prices. Gasoline prices have dropped a lot. Are gas prices now higher or lower than 6 months ago? 33% higher, only 29% lower. 33% say it's about the same, while 54% of those aged 18-29 say it's higher. Most say it's higher, 54% versus just 16% who say it's lower. Again, these numbers are shaped by Republicans. 27% say it's higher, but only 43% say it's lower. He isn't getting much recognition from his own party. Why is that? Well, that's because Americans on average spend only about 2% of their annual income on gasoline, so you can lower the price of gas. You just gave Americans another $300. That won't help them with their monthly private health insurance payment of $2, or with their mortgage payment of $4,000, $6,000, whatever it is. That doesn't change that you outsourced their $200,000 development job to India. That's not enough. You haven't fixed the core problem. And that's why every attempt to claim victories that don't actually solve the problems Americans are facing is, well, it's basically pointless. And again, I understand that you need to take credit for victories. Of course, yes, do that. There needs to be a unified message and a plan to solve the problems here, because the music stops. Look at the chart of homebuyers. The entire younger generation is being pushed out of the American dream. And we were told this a year ago when Trump won. He knew it. He promised to bring back the golden age for America. A golden age for America. It's not just about gas being $3 or $4. Look deeper. Republicans.
I hope the White House has sobered up, that they're analyzing the mood of the people and thinking about how to return to the ideas that made Americans vote for Trump. When all the traps were set against him, hired cohorts of resistors tried to stop him, knock him off course, even kill him. It's time to move away from solving global problems. We were all fascinated by our international successes and achievements, and rolling up our sleeves, work on making sure that Trump himself once said America first. And he tells the country about all the successes, the problems, and yes, about the failures too. So that everyone knows that sometimes we try, we make an effort, but it doesn't work out. Because otherwise your enemies will tell about it instead of you. In general, next year is a turning point. As I have already said, the Trump administration is moving away from foreign affairs, which we have all been playing around with. Okay, continuing with domestic affairs. Well, God willing, we really need it. We need it. By the beginning of summer, people already felt how much better their lives had become. To live.